Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling like something was off? Maybe the energy shifted or people seemed distant, but you couldn't quite put your finger on why. Here's the hard truth. Sometimes it's not them, it's us. Yep, even the most well-meaning people can unknowingly slip into habits that push others away. And the craziest part? These habits are subtle, sneaky even, hiding in plain sight and sabotaging connections before you even realize it. But don't worry, this isn't about finger-pointing or guilt trips, it's about awareness and growth. In today's video, we're diving into the 5 subtle habits that could be making you unlikable. And no, I'm not here to sugarcoat things. These might sting a little, but they're the kind of wake-up calls that lead to transformation. If you've ever felt like your relationships, whether at work, with friends, or even online, aren't quite as fulfilling as they could be, stick around. By the end of this video, you'll have the insights and practical tools to flip the script, reconnect, and show up as your most authentic self. This isn't your average self-help fluff. We're going to unpack the real, raw truths about how these habits creep into our daily lives and, most importantly, how to break free from them. So, if you're ready to take a hard look in the mirror and come out stronger, smarter, and more self-aware, hit that like button and keep watching. Because trust me, the person you'll become on the other side of this is someone people can't help but love. Let's get started. Number 1. The praise vacuum. Let me tell you something that might surprise you. One of the quickest ways to lose people's admiration is by chasing it too hard. Sounds ironic, doesn't it? But hear me out. There's a little trap that some of us fall into, often without even realizing it, and I call it the praise vacuum. It's this sneaky little habit of constantly pulling every bit of praise or recognition in the room toward yourself. And before you think, "Oh, I'd never do that," just stick with me for a moment. You might find this hits closer to home than you expect. Picture this. You're at work or with a group of friends, and someone starts complimenting a colleague or friend about something amazing they did. Maybe they nailed a presentation, organized a killer party, or just had a great idea. Now, we've all been there. That little voice in your head chimes in, "But what about me? I've done something great too." And suddenly, without even thinking, you say something like, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of when I..." Or, "Yeah, but you know, I did something similar recently." Sound familiar? It's okay. It's human. We all want to feel noticed and appreciated. But the problem is, every time we redirect that spotlight, we're subtly telling people, their moment doesn't matter as much as mine. Here's why this is so powerful and dangerous. People don't just remember how you act, they remember how you make them feel. When you constantly draw the focus to yourself, it doesn't just make you look self-centered, it makes others feel unseen. And over time, that feeling sticks. You might think you're just trying to share your perspective, but to others, it feels like you're sucking the air out of their moments, leaving a vacuum where genuine connection should be. And trust me, nobody wants to stick around when all the air is gone. Now, I get it. The idea of sitting quietly while someone else basks in the glow might feel weird or even unfair, especially if you're someone who doesn't get as much recognition as you'd like. But here's the twist. Letting someone else shine doesn't dim your light. In fact, it does the opposite. When you genuinely celebrate others, you become the kind of person people want to be around. You become the person they want to praise when you're not even in the room. Isn't that what we all want? To be remembered and valued not just for what we do, but for how we uplift those around us. Let me share a quick story. I was at this team meeting once, and one of my colleagues, Sarah, got a ton of recognition for solving a big problem on a project. Everyone was clapping, congratulating her, and honestly, I felt a twinge of envy. I had worked hard too, and part of me wanted to pipe up and say, well, I also contributed to that solution. But for once I didn't. I stayed quiet and genuinely joined in the applause. Later that day, Sarah came up to me and said, "You know, I couldn't have done that without your support. I didn't even have to say anything, she already knew. And because I let her moment be hers, our relationship grew stronger." That's when it hit me. People notice your humility, even if they don't say it out loud. Number 2. The one-upmanship game. You know that one friend who always has a better story? The one who, no matter what you share, be it a win, a challenge, or even just a funny little anecdote, somehow always manages to say, "Oh, that's nothing. Wait until you hear what I did." Now I know what you're thinking. Ugh, those people are the worst. But here's the thing. It's surprisingly easy to become that person without even realizing it. And when you do, you're playing a little game I like to call the one-upmanship game. Spoiler alert, nobody wins this game, least of all you. Let's be honest, we've all been there. Maybe someone is talking about their recent trip abroad, and you feel that irresistible urge to chime in with your unforgettable travel story. Or maybe a colleague shares a big accomplishment at work, and you suddenly feel the need to mention how you totally crushed it on a similar project last year. It's not that you're trying to steal the spotlight, at least not consciously. You just want to relate, to show that you've been there too. But here's the kicker. What feels like connecting to you often feels dismissive to the other person. Instead of making them feel heard, it makes them feel like they're competing in a race they didn't sign up for. Now, let's get real for a second. Why do we do this? The truth is, one-upmanship is often less about ego and more about insecurity. It's a subtle way of saying, "Please notice me too." And while that's completely human, here's the catch. Constantly trying to prove yourself doesn't make people admire you. It makes them want to avoid you. Think about it. Who would you rather talk to? Someone who listens intently or someone who constantly tries to outshine you? Exactly. So, here's the unconventional strategy to break free from the one-upmanship trap. Embrace what I call the art of pause and praise. The next time someone shares something, resist the urge to respond with your own story. Instead, pause. Let their words sink in. Then praise them. Say something like, "That's amazing. You must have worked so hard on that." Or, "Wow, that sounds like such an incredible experience." Not only does this shift the focus back to them, but it also shows that you're genuinely interested in what they have to say. And here's the twist. When you make others feel good about themselves, they'll naturally start to see you in a more positive light too. Let me give you an example. A few years ago, a friend of mine, Emma, was telling me about how she ran her first half marathon. Now, I've run a marathon before, and my instinct was to jump in and say, "That's awesome. I remember when I did my first long race." But something stopped me. Instead, I asked her how she trained and what motivated her to sign up in the first place. She lit up, talking about her struggles, her victories, and how proud she felt crossing the finish line. Later, she told me that my support and interest meant the world to her. And you know what? It felt so much better to celebrate her moment than to try to insert my own. Here's the beauty of this approach. When you let go of the need to prove yourself, you gain something far more valuable: genuine connections. This is about reclaiming your space, your peace, and your self-worth by realizing that you don't need to be the loudest or the most impressive person in the room to be valued. In fact, the quieter confidence of someone who listens and uplifts others speaks volumes. So the next time you feel that familiar urge to one-up someone, take a deep breath and remind yourself, it's not a competition. Your worth isn't tied to the stories you tell or the accolades you share. It's in how you make others feel. And trust me, when you master the art of pause and praise, you won't just win the game, you'll leave it behind entirely. That's where the real victory lies. Number 3. The helpful overstep. Let me ask you this. Have you ever tried to help someone and ended up making things worse? Maybe you gave them advice they didn't ask for, or stepped in to solve a problem they didn't want solved. And suddenly, instead of gratitude, you're met with resistance or even frustration. Sound familiar? Don't worry, you're not alone. Welcome to what I like to call the helpful overstep. It's that moment when your good intentions unintentionally cross a line, and instead of helping, you leave people feeling overwhelmed, undermined, or just plain annoyed. We've all been there. Picture this. A friend is venting about a tough day at work, and before they even finish, you're already offering solutions. Have you tried talking to your boss? Maybe you should look for a new job. Oh, I know exactly what you should do. And while you're patting yourself on the back for being so proactive, they're sitting there thinking, I didn't ask for a life coach. I just needed someone to listen. See the disconnect? It's not that they don't value your input, it's that they didn't ask for it in the first place. And when we jump in uninvited, we inadvertently make people feel like we don't trust them to handle their own lives. Here's where it gets tricky. Most of us offer unsolicited advice because we genuinely want to help. It's not about ego or control, it's about caring. But here's the twist. Helping isn't about doing what you think is best. It's about understanding what the other person actually needs. And sometimes what they need most is space to figure things out on their own. So, how do you strike the right balance? It's simpler than you think. Instead of jumping straight into solution mode, start with a question. Do you want advice, or do you just want me to listen? It's a small shift, but it can make a world of difference. Let me share a quick story to bring this to life. A while back, a colleague of mine, Ben, was struggling with a tight deadline. Naturally, I wanted to help, so I started rattling off tips on time management and productivity hacks. I thought I was being helpful, but the look on his face said otherwise. Finally, he sighed and said, I don't need advice right now. I just need someone to understand how stressed I am. That hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been so focused on fixing the problem that I forgot to consider what Ben actually needed. So I stopped talking and just listened. And you know what? By the end of our conversation, he seemed calmer and even thanked me for being there. That's when it clicked. Sometimes the best way to help is to not help, at least not right away. Here's why this strategy works. It shifts the focus from you to them. It shows that you respect their autonomy and trust them to navigate their own challenges. And let's be real, nobody likes feeling micromanaged, even if it's coming from a place of love. When you pause and ask what they need, you're not just being considerate. You're empowering them to take ownership of their situation. And that's a gift far more valuable than any piece of advice. This is about more than just avoiding awkward moments or hurt feelings. It's about fostering deeper, more meaningful connections. When you stop overstepping, you create space for mutual respect and understanding. You become the kind of person people turn to not because they have to, but because they want to. And there's something incredibly freeing about knowing that your presence alone can make a difference, even without a single word of advice. So the next time you catch yourself gearing up to play problem solver, take a moment to pause and ask, how can I best support you right now? You might be surprised by the answer, and in that moment, you'll discover that true help isn't about stepping in, it's about stepping back. This is your opportunity to reclaim your peace, their autonomy, and the kind of relationships that thrive on mutual respect. After all, sometimes the most helpful thing you can do is simply be there. And that, my friend, is a skill worth mastering. Number 4, the ghost listener. You've probably met one. You might even be one without realizing it. The ghost listener. It's that person who's physically present during a conversation, but mentally somewhere else entirely. They nod in the right places, throw in the occasional "wow" or "that's crazy," but their eyes betray them. They're checked out, and if you're thinking, "Wait, I've definitely done this before," don't worry, you're not alone. We've all been ghost listeners at some point. But here's the kicker. It's not just about missing details, it's about missing opportunities to truly connect. Think about it. How many times have you been halfway through a story only to realize the person you're talking to isn't really there? Maybe they're scrolling through their phone, glancing over your shoulder, or giving you that glazed over look that screams, "I'm listening out of obligation, not interest." It's frustrating, right? But here's the uncomfortable truth. If it feels that way when others do it to you, imagine how it feels when you're the one ghosting out. Why do we do this? It's not always intentional. Life moves fast, and our minds are constantly juggling a million things at once. Work deadlines, personal goals, random to-do lists. Sometimes it feels like being fully present is a luxury we can't afford. But here's the thing. When we're not fully present, we're robbing ourselves of something priceless, genuine human connection. And here's the good news. Fixing this doesn't require some massive personality overhaul. It starts with one simple, unconventional shift, what I like to call active curiosity. Now, let me explain. Active curiosity is the art of treating every conversation like a treasure hunt. Instead of just nodding along, ask yourself, what can I learn from this person right now? Maybe it's a piece of advice, a fresh perspective, or even just a glimpse into how they see the world. The point is, you're not just listening to reply, you're listening to discover. And trust me, when you approach conversations this way, something magical happens. You stop seeing people as background noise and start seeing them as stories worth unfolding. I'll never forget the time I tested this out. A coworker I barely knew started venting about her weekend, something about her garden, a broken fence, and her neighbor's dog. Normally, I would have tuned out halfway through, but instead, I leaned in. I asked her what she was planting, why she loved gardening, and what her dream backyard looked like. Her whole demeanor changed. She lit up, telling me about how her grandmother taught her to garden as a child, how it was her way of decompressing after a long week. By the end of the conversation, I didn't just know her better, I felt connected to her in a way I never had before. This isn't just about making others feel heard, although that's a big part of it. It's about what you gain too. When you're fully present, when you approach conversations with curiosity instead of autopilot, you open yourself up to a world of insight and connection. You walk away not just with words exchanged, but with stories, lessons, and sometimes even new friendships. Being a ghost listener is easy. It's passive, it's convenient, and it's often what we default to. But being an engaged listener, that's transformative. It's the kind of skill that elevates not just your relationships, but your entire outlook on life. This isn't about multitasking better or squeezing more into your day. It's about reclaiming the richness of every interaction. So here's my challenge to you. The next time you find yourself in a conversation, banish the ghost. Put down the phone, quiet the mental to-do list, and lean in with active curiosity. Ask questions, notice details, look people in the eye. Because when you do, you'll discover something incredible. The power of being truly present doesn't just change how others see you, it changes how you see the world. And that, my friend, is worth every second. Number 5, the grievance collector. You know that feeling when someone brings up a slight from months or even years ago, and you're left thinking, how on earth did they even remember that? Well, welcome to the world of the grievance collector. It's not always someone else, though. Sometimes, if we're honest, It's us. We hold on to those little slights, those forgotten thank yous, those times we felt overlooked or dismissed. We store them away like little mental receipts, ready to pull out when the opportunity arises. But here's the thing. What are we really gaining from all this collecting? Let me say it straight. Being a grievance collector feels oddly satisfying in the moment. It's like keeping a tally of all the ways you've been wronged gives you a sense of power or justice. But here's the uncomfortable truth. It's a one-way ticket to resentment city. And resentment, that's the emotional equivalent of drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. You don't win, you don't feel better. You just stay stuck in this loop of frustration. Why do we do it though? Well, collecting grievances can feel like self-protection. It's like telling yourself, if I remember all the ways they hurt me, I'll never let it happen again. But instead of building boundaries, it builds walls. It isolates you. And worse, it keeps you tied to those past hurts, replaying them like a bad rerun. The truth is, most of the people we're holding these grudges against don't even know or care that we're upset. They've moved on while we're left holding the baggage. So, what's the alternative? It's something I like to call emotional decluttering. Think of it like cleaning out an overstuffed closet. You take out each item, each grievance, and ask yourself, do I really need this? Does holding on to this serve me in any way? Most of the time the answer is no. Letting go doesn't mean the hurt never happened or that it didn't matter. It means you're choosing not to let it control you anymore. Let me share a moment from my own life. There was a time when I was absolutely convinced a close friend was taking me for granted. Every time I reached out first or adjusted my plans to fit theirs, I added it to my mental grievance list. One day, I finally brought it up, calmly, without the weight of all those receipts. And you know what? They had no idea I felt that way. They weren't intentionally ignoring my efforts. They'd just been dealing with their own stuff. That conversation cleared the air in ways my silent stewing never could. Here's the real beauty of emotional decluttering. It's liberating. When you stop carrying the weight of every slight, every forgotten favor, you make room for better things, like joy, connection, and peace. It's about reclaiming your mental and emotional energy for things that actually matter. This isn't about excusing bad behavior or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about choosing where to invest your energy. It's about recognizing that carrying around all those grievances doesn't punish the other person. It punishes you. And let's be real, life's too short to be weighed down by a suitcase full of grudges. So here's my challenge to you. Take a look at your collection. Ask yourself which grievances you're ready to let go of. And as you do, remember this: letting go doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to prioritize your peace over your pride. Because at the end of the day, your space, your peace, and your dignity are worth far more than any grudge you could ever hold on to. Thank you so much for watching. I truly hope this video gave you some helpful insights, or maybe even a few aha moments. If you found value in what we talked about today, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps support the channel and lets me know this content resonates with you. And if you're interested in diving deeper into topics like this, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on future videos. Know someone who might benefit from this? Share the video with them, because sometimes all it takes is one small shift in perspective to spark real change. And I'd love to hear from you too. What's one habit you've noticed, whether in yourself or others, that can unknowingly create distance in relationships? Drop it in the comments below. Let's start a conversation and learn from each other's experiences. Remember, self-awareness is a superpower. The more we understand about ourselves, the better we can show up for the people around us and for ourselves. You're already taking a powerful step just by watching this video. keep that momentum going, and until next time, take care and stay intentional. You've got this.